Hi, it's Brett Taylor here from Tour Tactics, and the other voice that I have with me today is Paul Dewland. Paul is the Director of Mental Performance at the Core Golf Academy in Orlando, Florida. And welcome, Paul, to the call.
Thank you.
Paul, maybe I'll just give you a second to, give a quick bio on yourself, maybe, and the Core Golf Academy, and then we'll kind of get into some stuff here on the psychology of golf.
Down here at Core, what we do is it's a junior academy primarily. We have kids from literally all over the world that come to the academy to improve. A lot of them are high school level kids that are looking to usually get a chance at getting a scholarship at a university to play on the golf team. And we're pretty successful, actually, in putting the kids out and getting them into the placements that they want, because what the coaches are really looking for in those teams is good kids that are easy to manage and can play the game. So that's the approach we take. We really try to help people not only, hit the ball better and play better, but also be better students of the game and actually, good people who learn how to build relationships and embrace the etiquette of the game that I think it was all founded on in the first place.
Sounds like a pretty good philosophy to me.
It is. It's amazing that when people take on that mindset of character, that it sounds like real platitudes and almost silly, but it really does make people better players because they're a lot more grounded.
Definitely. So. And your role then within that I guess academy?
So as you said, the title is Director of Mental Performance, but the idea of mental is it's an interesting word to choose for this work. So if I can describe my role as it relates to golf, if a golfer can hit a ball really well on the range, which is what the students, learn to do, or to pitch or chip or putt. But then they go to the course, and their skills aren't nearly the same as they are in the practice areas. Then that's, sort of the general way that we define that someone has a gap to close as far as the quote-unquote mental performance goes. But I think as this conversation unfolds, I'll elaborate on why it's, the mental piece of it, quote-unquote, is a little bit misnamed.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for that. And, we had a conversation the other day, and I think the way things will go through this conversation, I'd like to kind of touch on both the on-course strategies and the off-course strategies. And, of course, everybody, wants to have those on-course strategies. But as we've talked about, the off-course strategies are really important in having a significant impact on your ability to play well and to improve and to get to, new best scores and higher performance levels. So, and, you sent me a little graphic that communicates, the quote-unquote mental influence and physiology influence that affects the mental state, which really impacts your ability to access your skills, as you said. Can we get into that? And I guess I'll put that slide on my website for everyone to see. And so do you want to talk a little bit to that, Paul, that slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So assuming everyone's looking at the graphic, you see in the middle there that there's the word state. So as it relates to golf, when people talk about the mental stuff, if you listen to interviews when PGA Tour players are, after their round, they're leading the tournament, and they're asked the question, tell us about your round today, the answer is pretty consistent as far as the first thing people almost always say is, I just felt really good out there. So they aren't describing, that they were thinking, that they were trying to stay positive, that they were visualizing, but the way that they felt allowed them to, again, back to the graphic, allowed them to have access to their skills. So by access, I mean, as an example, if I put the 2x4 on the ground and say walk along it, it's pretty easy change their access to their skills. And this work is about giving people the skills, and if people treat this as a skill, that building and maintaining a performance state is a skill, but if you practice it consistently, and this is where I think people fall down most with this type of work, is that they think that it's about knowledge, and it's really not as much about knowledge as it is skill. So if I know all about swings and swing plane, but I don't practice, it's almost useless to have that knowledge. So the same with this work is that it takes very deliberate practice consistently. So, while you're practicing your golf, you have to practice state management in order to really have this hold up on the golf course. And I think that's the most exciting news for most of us, is that, it's just one more facet of skill to add into the golf game that, again, in the long term, if you work at this consistently and diligently, what emerges is better shots on the course, because what we have practiced on the court, on the range, shows up out there.
So, yeah, I mean, that's it's an interesting analogy with the 2x4 and 50 feet in the air, and, it does change things. And so, how do you practice getting into that ideal performance state where, being 50 feet above the ground on that 2x4 actually feels like it's on the ground? How do you kind of create those conditions on demand?
So back to the graphic, the two pieces, the physiological piece and the mental piece. And the mental is quote unquote mental, because you'll find out that the idea of mental seems to promote thinking a certain way. But if you, let's take the physiological side of things first. I ask people to do this little exercise quite often, and if this entertains your listeners, then they can try this. So if I I'll ask everybody that's listening to try this right now. Sit in your chair or wherever you are, and sit in sort of a hunchy posture. And I want everyone to start thinking about something that's bothered them in the last little while, something that's been frustrating or made them angry or just stressful. And I want everyone to sort of really start to feel the emotions that go with that situation. And just take a minute to try that. Okay, now, presuming you feel some of that state that you've shifted yourself into, now if everyone can sit up on the front edge of their chair, so your sit bones are just near the front end, and just lengthen the front of your body so you're sitting super tall as you can, okay? And put your arms out to your side to make your body into the shape of the letter T, like a capital T. And then turn your palms up to the ceiling. And then turn your face up so you're facing the ceiling. And keep your face as parallel as you can to the ceiling. Now, put a nice gentle smile on your face while you hold yourself in that posture. Now stay in that posture, don't change it, and try to think about that event. And try and engage that state that you felt that goes with that event. Okay, now, most people report that it's very difficult to even think about the event when they're in that posture. So that's an example of how physiology has an influence on state, and in fact, it has a more significant influence on state than does thinking. So, a lot of the psychology end of this stuff is great stuff, but it's secondary to the fact that if people really learned how to release muscle tension, how to breathe effectively. Hydration is huge. If people are dehydrated, it has a significant impact on your state as well as energy levels. What people do with their eyes in terms of holding them holding them still and up on the horizon. You might have noticed Tiger Woods when he was at his when he is playing at his peak, that his eyes don't really go down very often. That changes an awful lot of what's going on internally, because when you move your eyes around, it acts a bit like a switchgear. that in and of itself changes your state. So back to, again, to the importance of state. The state you're in influences your thinking, your mental activity, more than your mental activity influences your state. So I use the example of when I get home from a bad day. I come home, I'm in a bad mood. I've got two kids, and I come in and they're acting up. My response is going to be, typically pretty lousy. It's going to pretty much match my state. I'm going to be thinking in a negative way. I'll be frustrated, and I'm not going to have access to my parenting skills. If I come home in the right state, and they're doing the exact same behavior, I will have access to my parenting skills. And we all have these examples where, we act out of character because of our mood, despite the fact that we know we shouldn't. So we lose access to our good sensibility about how to communicate, how to treat our kids if we have them, how to conduct ourselves on the golf course. So physiology is very powerful. So if I find I'm coming home and I'm not in the greatest places and I have the mindfulness to actually do something about it, then I'll change my breathing patterns, my posture. I'll make sure that my muscles are as lengthened as possible. I'll loosen off around my neck and shoulders, my jaw. And it's amazing after just a couple of minutes of really managing those pieces how much that influences state. Then what happens is, healthier thinking patterns emerge because that state promotes them.
Yeah, even just the simple keeping your eyes up. I think if you're on the golf course and you're looking down, you're probably thinking about your last shot or analyzing something maybe, or it just has a negative sort of feel to it as opposed to looking up, and that will change your physiology and your sort of frame of mind overall. I think it's it's a simple thing, but it does have a significant effect on your physiology. And as outlined in your chart here or slide, it's it has an impact on your ability to access the skills that you need to have great performance.
Yeah, correct. When we look down, just to further chat about that piece, when we look down, that turns on the part of our brain that processes words, thinking. Talking to ourselves has a significant influence on our state. So, in fact, the tone we talk to ourselves in is a significant determinant of how we feel. So, if you ever notice that, when someone is nagging at you, the tone of their voice triggers certain states in your body. And likewise, someone talks in a nicer tone to you, that changes that triggers a different response. Now, if I stay tall, breathe, keep a soft face, and keep my eyes up while someone's nagging at me, the influence that those tones of their words have on me are reduced. I can stay a lot more self-determining that way. I don't have to be a victim of the tone that people are talking to me in. Yeah. Likewise, the tone I talk to myself in influences my moods.
Yeah, definitely. These sort of off course, although that's sort of an on course strategy, but it's kind of based on some off course thinking a bit. I'd want to get into one more of the off course sort of things that's a really big one, and I think gets overlooked quite often when it comes to ideal performance in golf and improving your mindset towards playing well. And it's that topic of self-belief and the overall expectation of where each player feels they belong as a player. And I know that has a very influential impact on people's ability to shoot lower scores. And we kind of talked about that sort of thermostat of people's ability where they feel comfortable playing, and it kind of if you can lower that thermostat of expectation, if I can call it that, of where you expect to play, this can get kind of deep, but I think it's really important because when people get out of their comfort zone and they start shooting a really low score, self-sabotage kind of kicks in sometimes and pulls people back into their comfort zone. So, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, this is a really important point. Again, like you said earlier, the stuff on course is what people have a lot of interest in because that's where their problems reveal themselves. But when you mentioned about the self-image and the thermostat, I find that's a significant piece of the puzzle. But this requires consistent work over time. It's not one of these quick fix things.
Right.
It's like fitness. It's you're not gonna read a fitness book and be fit. You're gonna go to the gym for months and months and months before you start to see any real significant consistency in your fitness level. So with this piece, if we just take the idea of a thermostat in a house and it's connected to a furnace or an air conditioner, if the furnace is capable of heating a house to, let's say, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, if it's turned on all the time, that's the capacity of that furnace is 100 degrees. But if you set the thermostat at 72 degrees, I don't care what the capacity of the furnace is, that room is not going above 72-ish. You might go to 73, 74 before it kicks in, or 68, 69, 70 before it kicks in. But it's bringing you back to what you've got set on the thermostat. So if you relate that to someone's golf game, what they can do on the range is kind of what the capacity of that furnace is. So they hit it like a champ on the range, get to the first tee, and everything changes in terms of their state access. Part of what shifts that state is that self-image. Now, it's not a conscious thing, really. It's more of a subconscious thing. So if you realize that there's this idea that you have of yourself as a golfer, and people say it all the time, I always blow it on the 14th hole or whatever, they keep saying, those are hints as to, what their idea of what their self is as a golfer. But what really changes things is not so much talking to yourself and saying, I believe I can shoot low scores. That's not necessarily the best way to go about it. What I've found is that people that have very strong, vivid imaginations and they use them consistently, in other words, and I'll sort of throw this out and hope people that can use this, listen to this as if it's in bold letters. Act as if it's already true. That's what the subconscious responds to. So the subconscious or the body will respond to vividly imagined or remembered ideas. And pay attention because this is a big deal. What you hold in your conscious mind consistently as a memory or as an imagined state is what gets programmed in as your thermostat setting and what you attach emotion to. So when people hit a bad shot or blow around and they obsess over that and they add emotion to it, it programs in that thermostat setting literally as if we're requesting it for the future. And likewise, imagination. And this is where real growth can take place and can get accelerated. Obviously, skill development's a piece of this, but if people can imagine that they've already shot their record score, and they do that consistently, and their imagination is vivid. This is asking a lot. It takes a lot of practice, and this is again why people fail at this end, is because you've got to be consistent. You've got to do this stuff every day, and there's drills to do. That if you do it every day, over time you consistently reprogram your subconscious to give you a different thermostat setting. Then you get on the golf course and you just kind of allow yourself to play that way. You don't have to force it or challenge it along for yourself. So imagining something's already true, the body reacts as if it's real. So if someone were to imagine and vividly imagine having a slice of lemon in their mouth, they actually start to salivate because their body thinks that there's a lemon in their mouth. So this is why advertising is so powerful, by the way. You see a picture of a hamburger on TV and all of a sudden you have a craving because the hamburger's in front of you in your subconscious. So consistently, like every day, even for 10 minutes, just while you're driving your car, while you're sitting on the subway or whatever, imagine already being at the level of play that you want. Scratch golfer, breaking 80, winning the tournament, and holding the trophy in your hands, feeling it in there. That's what changes what we call belief, because our belief about ourselves comes from what we repeatedly see about ourselves, and you can't ask for it or want it. You have to pretend it's already true, and that's what activates the change. And I find that's not commonly practiced. Most people will talk about wanting to, or how cool would it be if I won this tournament or did that, versus actually pretending internally that it's real.
And I think it's so valuable to program your mind in that way. And as you said the other day, it's not difficult, but it is uncomfortable. And for a lot of people, that's the case. And it seems almost it's not that you're being untruthful or lying to yourself, but it's just how your mind works. And if you program your mind to believe that you're capable and that you've already achieved whatever it is that is your goal, then your mind starts to follow suit and really play out that as reality.
Yeah, 100%. As if we imagine something that's not true, and imagine it's not true in fact right now, and we imagine it to be true, such as winning a tournament or shooting, our best score ever. There's a part of us that feels uncomfortable with that, and that discomfort is just an indication that change is taking place.
Right.
It's the nature of how our system functions. That discomfort is actually telling us, hey, you're about to change stuff. Are you sure you want this? It's like when you press the delete button on a computer. What pops up on the screen is, are you sure? That's what discomfort is, more or less, is just your system saying, hey, listen, we don't always do this. You sure? Because if you keep doing this, this will be our new habit, and this will be the way that you function. So I find that the people that, A, have practiced imagination, and B, have a tolerance for discomfort, are the ones that actually get better, not only from, it's like a grip change. It's very uncomfortable, but if you can embrace the discomfort versus go, oh, I don't like the way this feels, you actually change faster, and the process is a lot more pleasant, because discomfort is actually healthy, not unhealthy.
Right, for sure.
So tolerance for discomfort and a vivid imagination, and you're doing yourself a favor as far as reprogramming your unconscious belief system, because at some point you become comfortable with the imagined idea of doing something, and that's what people would say is a belief. It's like, yeah, I actually believe it because it feels right. It feels comfortable. I believe in myself when I've imagined this enough. And there's a part of me that thinks it's true, because it doesn't. If I imagine I've won a tournament 75 times a day over a period of time, there's a part of me that just kind of one day goes, well, of course this is possible, but it doesn't come overnight. It's not just this, one-time affirmation that I say it. It's literally internally. I see it. I see what I would see. I see the crowd of people around me at a tournament. I look at the trophy in my hands. I feel how cold the metal is on the trophy's handles. I feel myself kiss the trophy. All of those things that are part of what would happen if you won. If you vividly imagine it, not so much the words of I've won the tournament, but rather the sort of internal movie, if you will.
Yeah.
That's what makes the change. The words encourage the movie, but the movie's the real deal. That's what it is. So just saying words over and over isn't nearly as powerful as accompanying those words with internal movies.
Yeah, and I think one of the key words that you mentioned through all of that explanation is habit. It is habitual, and you do need to use repetition. And we hear Tiger talk about reps and repeating his swing, and it's the same mentally. If you repeat over and over a specific image and thought and process, well, then it becomes habitual and it becomes more real.
Yeah, 100%.
And you mentioned in there about the vivid imagination and just making that I guess that process as real as possible, just like imagining the lemon. As you mentioned, it makes you salivate, and if you can vividly imagine where it is you want to be and doing what you want to do, then it becomes a new habit for you. And I think, self-talk and affirmations, that's a small piece of that. I was going to get into self-talk as well, and how does that sort of play into it? Sounds to me like it's less of a factor than the visual component of that practice. Would that be fair?
Well, the self-talk is great to trigger the movies. Some people don't think so much in words. They think more in pictures, feelings, and sounds. But some people have to think in words first for the movie to come to them, which is fine, no problem at all. But if you're just saying, I have a lemon in my mouth, but you don't imagine the feeling of a slice of lemon in your mouth, you will not salivate.
Right, of course. Yeah, definitely.
So if I have to say, I have a lemon in my mouth, in order to trigger the idea, the feeling of the lemon in my mouth and the flavor and the odor of it in my nasal cavity, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to do. But the words themselves aren't enough. You have to have the pictures, the feelings, and the sounds to go with it.
Yeah. Okay. And sort of, I guess, as a little bit of a transition from the off-course to the on-course stuff, visualization and the imagery that we just talked about, how do you feel about using visualization on the course? Maybe not so much in a self-belief or format, but just as seeing the next shot and from that perspective, and how does that affect on-course performance?
So some people don't have any image at all. They just look and they have a feeling in their body and they go ahead and hit it. Some people have to see the image before they can feel it. Again, everyone's different. You have to sort of experiment and find out what your own ingredients are. But in general, for those who do use visualization, again, back to what tournament, post-tournament interviews, what's often said in them, somebody will say, I just saw the line. In other words, it emerged to them. It emerged from within them. When you're in the right state, then you see stuff. You don't have to force an image in to try and see it. It just kind of shows up for you. And that's the ultimate level of, what people call creativity. Creativity isn't a conscious process. It comes from subconscious levels, where all of your experience from over the years just emerges and comes out. And if you can keep yourself quiet, that stuff comes, and you're in the right state and keep yourself quiet and present. You just look at a green, and the image comes much more easily than if you're thinking, gee, I have to see the line, and you're trying to visualize it. You're kind of jamming out your own creative process, and all of the experience that's accumulated over the thousands of putted players made over the years, that there's this sort of knowing at the unconscious level that just shows up. It's a very natural, simple thing.
So visualization, when you rehearse it so much, on the self-belief side, and you're practicing it, does that positively influence your ability to have it sort of automate itself on the course, where it just kind of shows up, as you said, and those players that are playing their best, and then they just see it and they just feel it? And so does that sort of off-course time that someone might spend using visualization and making it really vivid and feeling it, does that have a positive influence on it just sort of showing up on the course?
That does. It's a combination of the self-image is sort of your subconscious giving you permission to have access to that experience. But the other thing is that let's go back into visualization. Sorry, my phone's beeping here.
Sure.
Visualization piece. People think in different modes, and the three modes that are most, or four modes rather, that are most relevant to golf are visual, so you see things, kinesthetic or feel, auditory, and in this case auditory tonal, which is the sound, and then words. So the sound of a word is different. So from the auditory tonal piece, in that I can say golf ball, or I can say golf ball. So the tone changed, but the word's the same, right?
Right.
So the tone is one mode of processing information. the ones that are most relevant to golf skill are visualization and kinesthetic feeling. Some people don't visualize; they just feel. They see. They look at the hole and they just feel what to do. Just like, baseball is a great example. Somebody playing third base, the ball gets hit to them, and they just look at the catcher's mitt on first base and throw because they have a feeling, but they don't visualize the ball going there.
Right.
There might be an unconscious visual image matching it, but they're not conscious of that image. And in fact, they don't have time to do it. To sit there and, let's close their eyes for a second and then throw the ball to first. It's like the guy's already on first base.
Right, yeah, of course.
So in golf, some people see the image first and they feel it. Some people just feel it. Their eyes just tell them. Their feet tell them the slope of the green and they don't really see it. Everybody's a little bit different with the mode that they use to process their decision making and their commitment to the shot. So with that said, so the people out there that are like, I don't visualize. I guess I'm doing something wrong. No, they're not doing something wrong. They have a different way of doing it. You can be very successful without visual images. So for the people that process a shot by feel, they just feel it. For the people that need an image first, they just see it when they're in the right state. But when you're in the wrong state, we start forcing images in, and those don't necessarily correlate to the best things for us in terms of having success out there.
That's probably a bit of relief for some people who maybe struggle with trying to visualize, thinking that, that's something that has to be done. But as you pointed out, a lot of great players don't necessarily visualize something before they do it on the course, and it's just a feeling that sort of comes with the shot.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to establish really how they do things, one of the things I'd suggest they do is just go to like a pitching area, like where you can pitch golf balls, not a putting green necessarily, and just throw balls. Like just pick up a basket of balls and just toss them underhand, and just notice how they do that, because that's a very natural movement for most people, and that will tell you a little bit about how you're probably best suited to play golf. Because I find it's really confusing for people. If you get a visual teacher, they're going to tell everybody to visualize. A portion of people they teach are going to be looking like, oh my God, I don't even know if I can see my shots. and they could get themselves pretty mixed up when they get out there and try it. And yet they can, if you can successfully do it by tossing a few golf balls underhand, without an image, then off you go. You know how to do it. And again, everybody is so different. When I work with people, I have to take a lot of time to figure out how they actually do things and try and work with their system versus me force a certain system onto it because I have a preference for it.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about talking about personal preference here. Some players, when they're on the course, like to get excited, like Tiger used to when he used to throw around all those fist pumps, and then others kind of feel that they need to have an even keel approach. What are your thoughts on managing your emotions on the course, and should a player withhold that excitement and sort of ignore anger, or what do you coach in those areas?